When we were in college, and SCC was located in Pasadena, Don Nelson and Harlan Selvey wanted to come down and start this church in Newport Beach. So they just asked me if I would help, and so I came down and helped. And so the very first Saturday we came down and passed out 1,000 leaflets all over Lido Isle. And
Newport Beach.
And Newport Beach. And so we had no idea, how many would come to church the next morning. And but anyway, we came from Pasadena the next morning then and waited for our little church to come. And we had 5 children. And that was all out of those 1,000 leaflets. But that's how we started.
I was still it was my 3rd year at Southern California Bible College, and I was involved in a gospel team. We came down to have a service at the Newport Beach Assembly of God. And I had no anticipation, no expectation, nothing forewarned me that this was going to happen, but at the conclusion of the service, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that God was saying to me, this is where I want you to minister, not to pastor at that point, but to come and assist and work in that church. And it was, I wept,
bitterly.
I don't know, bitterly, but profusely at the altar, just fighting God. Eventually, I said yes to the Lord, and it was at that time then I started to come. We drove down and from Pasadena to the campus here. They let us use one of the old barrack buildings and had a stove and a kitchen in there so we could cook our meals. We stayed there, just lounged around and whatever, prayed and studied, stayed for the service, and then drove back up to Pasadena that night. So that was my first year. And then the following summer, my senior year in college is when I became, we weren't married then, but I became the pastor at that time. Yeah. So it was the summer of 1950.
See, must have been in probably 51 or so, 1951, if we first started attending and helping a little bit in the church at that time. With when
he was still in college.
I was in college, yeah. When Dan Pecota was pastoring, I believe, at that time when I started. Full of young people, vibrant young people. And I considered myself young then myself, except that they were even younger.
They were beach bums, I guess you could call them. They were just children off the streets that Dan and Harlan and others had corralled. Most of them were just down right off the beach, and their families, some of the families were kind of horror stories, actually.
What I would consider to be a sovereign move of God's Spirit in the lives of about a dozen of the young people. And I don't remember what I had preached on that Sunday morning. I don't recall anything that prompted it in the first place. Nothing. I can't recall anything. But there was like I say, a sovereign move of God, and these dozen teenagers just moved to the front, came to the altar, and or to the front anyhow, and just gave their hearts to Christ. And that probably is certainly one of the most outstanding highlights in my mind as far as what the Lord did.
There were about 12 people that came at one time, and Dr. Ray White was one of those. And it's been especially kind of interesting for us because he has become my husband's colleague in the college where he's teaching now. So who would ever have thought, that would happen?
We moved to California from New England, and Frank Hagerman, who was in my freshman algebra class at Newport Harbor, asked me to go to church with him. And so I went with him to the little Newport Beach Assembly of God church and started attending in my freshman year, and was rather spasmodic during my sophomore year. It really didn't go a lot at all. And then during my junior year, that's when I made my commitment to Christ in November, the second Sunday of November of 1952.
The first night that we came, we really felt the Spirit of the Lord there. It was so sweet, and it was tiny, and we felt the love of the Lord there, and we felt it was a church that we could really do something in. They needed us.
At that time, the church was located at right on the ocean front, a little old store building, and right in front of the store building was the walk, and then the beach, all the sand, and just right there.
We assumed the pastorate the first Sunday of November in 1957. Dr. Harold Fisher had been contacted to have someone from the college take the pastorate, in that Ira Pratt had resigned and left, and so he arranged that I would be invited down there to speak on a Sunday morning, and the leadership of the church asked me to become their pastor in the first Sunday in November 1957, and then they invited me back that night, and we probably had about 15-20 people that were there in services that morning, and we're meeting in the old Grange building down at 15th and Balboa in Newport Beach. It was either late 58 or early 59 that we moved to the 15th and Monrovia. Yeah.
First of all, if I recall correctly, I was aware of the church people. They were very warm to us during our 2 or 3 short revivals there. And I think the most remarkable thing about the physical part of it was we used to call it the head-knocking church. You couldn't use the outside aisles without bending way over, and me being 6'3", I had to really humble myself before I got to the platform. Of course, it being in California and me being somewhat ill, in fact, proved to be very ill, we thought maybe by coming that our health would improve.
And it was amazing how God began to move. I came to Newport Beach because God called me there. And from the first service that we were there, it was amazing how God began to bless until the 6.5 or 7 years that we were there. In fact, the last Sunday morning that I was there, the church was completely packed out.
It was probably ran, I think, 75 to 100 when we started going there. Maybe a little smaller than that, maybe a little larger, but I think somewhere's in that neighborhood. Tom Benvenuti was a pastor, and it was an on-fire church. A lot of Tom was a fiery preacher, and the church was a fiery church.
The hippies had control all of Long Beach down into Newport Beach and Huntington Beach. And we started an Agape Inn, where I would go out and pick up sandwiches every Friday and Saturday and bring them down, and the kids would go out to the beaches and bring these hippies in. And we'd preach to them. They'd sing and preach to them, testify to them, and feed them. And it was amazing how many began to get saved and filled with the Spirit of God. It was a tremendous outreach of the church. Paul Goad got saved in that Agape Inn, and is a missionary today for the glory of the Lord.
I think I came to the church to work in the education department. I was Sunday school superintendent or something in the early days. I can't remember exactly. I think it was Sunday school superintendent, and taught the high school class, I think, high school or college, I don't remember which, maybe both at different times. Later taught the adult class, which was my favorite. The older they were, the better I liked them, actually. I actually became eventually assistant pastor at the church, and then served, after Tom Benvenuti left, served as chairman of the board when George Wood was called to the church.
In late January of 1971, we accepted on the provision that I couldn't come full-time until June of that year. I needed to finish my contract at Evangel College. So for a period of 5 months, every other weekend, I flew out to the church and ministered on Sunday, and then caught the red-eye special back to Kansas City to Springfield, Missouri, and was in class at 7:30 or 8 o'clock on Monday morning. And then we came full-time in June of 1971.
Wayne and I came with our daughter Renee in August of 1972. She was 16 months old at the time.
I did everything. I remember planting grass, watering grass. I mean, we we didn't even have enough money to buy a sprinkler head, so I would go out there and use my thumb on the end of a hose, grass.
Changing light bulbs.
Changing light bulbs. I remember visitation, Sunday school, painting, hauling tables, all the things that I do today.
It seemed like in those days there was nothing you couldn't do. It was, if someone came up with an idea, George was willing to try it, and the basic, I think, unwritten philosophy was if the Lord is in it, it'll succeed. And if he's not, it'll fall flat on its face, and we'll go another direction.
to fight all of the way. I want him to fight every day. I want him to be my guide, and from the start, well, come on and fight each and every day. I want him to fight all of the way. I want him to fight every day. I want him to be my guide, and from the start, well, come on and fight each and every day. He fought for David one day on that sinful battlefield. He had a big task before him, had that giant Goliath to kill. He said, shout for the Father, shout for the Son, shout for the Holy Ghost. The battle was won. Come on and fight each and every day. I want him to fight all of the way. I want him to fight every day. I want him to be my guide, and from the start, well, come on and fight each and every day. I want him to fight all of the way. I want him to fight every day. I want him to be my guide, and from the start, well, come on and fight each and every day. As I journey through the land, singing as I go, pointing so I was talking. One day I was living deep in sin. I didn't believe the Lord, and I wouldn't receive His word. No, I never knew I needed such a friend. Oh, yes. But I started seeking, I started searching, looking for that man of Galilee. Oh, yes. I started praying. Here's the words I was saying. Lord, come down from glory and set your child free. Oh, yes. And don't you know He put running, He put clapping in my hand, He put shouting, He took my doubting. My way got brighter, road got lighter. I started walking, I started talking, I started singing, kept right on shouting. God said that. Yes, He did. God said that. Yes, He did. Well, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. All day long. Well, everybody should have been there when He set me free. And don't you know He put running, He put clapping, He put shouting, He took my doubting. My way got brighter, road got lighter. I started walking, I started talking, I started singing, kept right on shouting. God said that. Yes, He did. God said that. Yes, He did. Well, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. All day long. Well, everybody should have been there when He set me free. Set me free.
busy that I can't get through. That's why I can call him when I want to. I can tell him what I need. And there's no special place. Everywhere I can see his face, so glad. I can call him when I want to. I can tell him what I need. Oh, I'll never worry. I'll never fret. My friend Jesus, thank God. He's such to my weary soul. And I know me makes no difference what time I call. This man Jesus is my all. Sweetest thing about him, I can call him and I can tell him what oh, I'll never worry, I'll never fret. My friend Jesus, thank God, it's such to my weary soul, and I know me makes no difference what time I call. This man Jesus is my all in all. Sweetest thing about him, I can call him, and I can tell him what I need. There is no price for what he's done for me, yes. I can call him when I want to. I can tell him what I need. There's no special way. I just bow on my knees and pray, thank God. I can call him when I want to. I can tell him what I need. And there's no place to hide, for his eyes are open wide, so glad. I can call him when I want to. I can tell him what I need. Oh, I'll never worry, I'll never fret. My friend Jesus, thank God, it's such to my weary soul, and I know me makes no difference what time I call. This man Jesus is my all in all. Sweetest thing about him, I can call him, and I can tell him what I I've heard the story when I need thy strength and power to help me over my weakest hour. Let me through the darkness thy face to see. Oh, lead me, dear Lord, lead me. Help me tread